everybody. My name is Joyce Slater, and I am the president of Motel, Missouri Storytelling, Inc. I'd like to recognize a few other presidents who are in the room. Larry Brown, where are you? Yes. And Sue Hinkle, back there in the back. Sue Hinkle can't get away from Motel. She's been on the board since its inception in 1984. So around there. So let's give her a big hand. A couple of the other presidents, the founder of Motel is Perrin Stiefel, but he's in Montana right now, enjoying vacation with his family. And then there's Karen Potts, and she's in St. Louis. So we are grateful for our leadership in Motel and keeping it going. Motel is a group that, one of our missions is to make sure the people in Missouri hear and know stories. So we are in the state parks in Missouri, and you know, we have the most beautiful state parks. They are so well maintained and wonderful. So we are happy to support storytellers in the state parks. We also have this Liars Contest. And I'd like to recognize Ken Wolf. If any of you have received one of our newsletters, he designs it. I just feed him the information and he goes. Let's give him a... This thing is, it kind of droops. It goes... All right. The history of the Liars Contest. It started with Anthony Clark. This is our 5th year for a Liars Contest. Actually, he came to Motel and said he wanted to do this, but he wanted us to help him organize it. So we haven't seen Anthony in a couple of years, so I guess it's our baby. And we are in number 5 year. We are going to St. Louis next year. What I would like to see is the Liars Contest travel around the state so that we encourage lying in all parts of our state. Let's give a big thank you for our judges back there. We have the A-team. We have Amy and Alex and Adam. See? The A-team. They will be judging all of the storytelling, and there's going to be a lot of it. We have 7 storytellers and 8 stories. I guess somebody couldn't just stick to one lie. We also have a written portion. So we have 6 people who wrote lies. That's forever in somebody's memory. Watch out. But now I would like to recognize, first of all, our board. Gary Kuntz is on the board. He takes care of our computers. Sue is our treasurer, Sue Hinkle. Jim Tucros Wallen is on the board. He's the secretary. And Perrin is our board emeritus. He just tells us what to do. If you know Perrin, you know how that is. We would like to recognize one of our board members who passed away this year, Becky Wallstrom. And many of you know her from the St. Louis Storytelling Festival. She ran that festival for many, many years and died suddenly after the festival, about maybe a week or 10 days after the festival. So I'd just like to take a moment of silence to remember Becky. She is such a good friend, always a smile on her face. And now, we have a special guest today. See, this thing is drooping. I think I need a screwdriver. Oh, it was too heavy on one end. Oh, I see. We want to thank Sarah Howard and the Columbia Public Library for hosting us today. Yay! And thank you to Aaron Swearingen. Did I remember that correctly? Yay! And now I would like to introduce you to a person that some of you have known for many years. Some of you, this will be a new face. But he's been very, very important to storytelling in Missouri, beginning with the St. Louis Storytelling Festival. Long ago, 40 years ago, this festival started in St. Louis. It is a free festival, and storytellers travel all throughout the city and the neighboring state of Illinois and tell stories to people who get to listen to them for free. It's a wonderful, wonderful storytelling festival, but it all started with that founding chairman, Dr. Ron Turner, who lives right here in Columbia. Come on up, Ron. I'd like everybody to see who Ron is. Come up. He didn't hear what I said. It's okay. Remember this face, because he is so important also to Motel. Perrin told me if it hadn't been for Ron, there wouldn't be Motel. You encouraged the whole organization, so we owe him a great debt. We want to thank you. You know, we don't have a lot of ways to thank people in Motel because, well, we're storytellers. We could tell him a story. But we are making Ron a lifetime member of Missouri Storytelling Inc. Thank you. You are welcome. And I didn't know that Ron was so involved with education globally, too. So you spread the word everywhere, don't you?
Do my best.
Do you have anything to say to anybody?
Sure.
All right.
Sarah, the problem with the microphone was that there was a nut loose up here at the podium. I'm kidding. And also, it's the first time, I'd say in 50 or 60 years that I've been called a new face. So thank you for that. So for those of you who haven't seen this face, it's as good as it gets. Thank you. Thank everybody for being here. I feel like, you know, it's all part of one big family, and it's so nice to have some little role in storytelling. Thank you.
I don't know who's next. If they're tall, then they can adjust this for themselves. Like I said, that St. Louis Storytelling Festival has been going on for a long time. So if you get a chance to go to it, it's in St. Louis in the month of May, the first full weekend in the month of May. And it's all over, and I think they're back at the Arch now and a variety of places. If you want to find out about it, just look up St. Louis Storytelling Festival. If you want to know anything about the National Storytelling Network, you contact Jackie Wright right here on the front row. She is the state liaison for Missouri, and she's doing a fabulous job. She does. She informs everybody of everything that's going on in the state. Today we're going to hear some new and exciting stories. This is what I love about this Liars Contest, because sometimes, you know, you find people who are stuck in the storytelling rut. They tell the same stories forever. And you wonder when they're going to take a class or learn a new story. But guess what? At this Liars Contest, they have created every one of these stories. And they're new and they're fresh, and you're hearing them probably for the first time, except You know, somebody who's married to a storyteller, she's probably heard his over and over and over, as well as you two. That's the problem with being married to a storyteller. They get to hear stories all the time, which is good. Good thing my husband isn't here. But it is so fresh. I would like to remind you that there are other places where you can tell tall tales. For instance, in Downs, Alan DeBay back there in the back is from Downs, and they have a tall tale contest. And is this like your 26th or 27th year? 27th year. And so it's for amateurs, right? Amateurs only. So every year they have auditions, which eliminates certain people, and you get to tell a tall tale at their festival. We have a storytelling festival on the west side of the state too, in Kansas City. I happen to run that. I have 3 clones right now of myself, so I can do all things everywhere. But enough about all of that. We are ready to hear stories. Who's ready to hear a story? Okay, our storytellers drew numbers. Our first storyteller is Larry Brown. Larry Brown is from, well, he says his address is Fulton, Missouri. Is that really where you live?
Millersburg.
No, I thought it was Millersburg, but he has to get his mail somewhere. And so let's welcome Larry Brown.
You have to eat it.
Now, most of us have had some kind of stressful experience with an airline, whether it's been lost luggage or a missed or canceled flight, or perhaps a near miss, or maybe even a crash. And I myself have been scared a number of times. There was that equipment failure that caused the emergency landing that time. There was that incredibly bumpy ride in that little flying sausage. And there was the short runway in Central America. And there was, again, that near miss that we had at one of the airports. But I want to tell you today about the worst experience I ever had. There was a quivering and a shaking of the plane. There was a rocking and an abrupt rise and fall. And the fasten seatbelt light came on. And the voice of Captain Sally boomed across the speaker.
We're experiencing some high altitude turbulence. This is Captain Sally. Just notice that I've turned on the fasten the seatbelt sign. I want you to return to your seats, remain seated, keep your seatbelts on. If you need assistance, call the flight attendant. And the turbulence will be over in a few moments. Thank you for your attention.
And for 20 minutes, this went on. The passengers began to get nervous, some of them fearful. And again, Captain Sally booming over the speaker.
Just wanted to give you an update. We're having a little bit of equipment failure, but we'll have that taken care of in just a few moments. Thank you for your attention.
And now there was beginning to be whispering and concerns across the compartment. Once again, Captain Sally.
This is Captain Sally. I need the assistance of someone between the ages of 8 and 12 to come up and help us with our computer problems.
And immediately 3 kids ran up to the cabin, and there was the co-pilot negotiating, picked one, sent him into the cabin, and the door was locked. Now the passengers were whimpering, discussing with one another. And then little bags dropped out of the top of the compartments above us. And a flight attendant went up to the front of the cabin, and she was holding the microphone saying, Captain Sally has announced we're going to have to make an emergency landing in Sidney, Nebraska. I want you to assume the safety positions. Now, I, for one, couldn't find my ankles, let alone hold them. The woman beside me was buried in her barf bag. The guy behind me saying prayers out loud. And the guy over there trying to get his beer finished before we crashed. All the while I was beginning to wonder what was going to happen myself. And then I remembered. I was one of those people that volunteered to jump off of the airplane if we needed to lighten the load in case of an emergency landing. I need to tell you how I got myself in this mess. You see, my wife and I, Linda, frequent one of those cheap pizza buffets, Cha-Cha's Pizza, you know, the ones that have fresh pizza and have the little game room for unattended and unruly children. And, you know, they have the little card that you get if you're a frequent customer, and you scan it in, and if after 12 times you get a free drink. And well, that time we showed up, they were offering a special discount coupon on an economy airline. And I had my 12 visits, and so I took advantage and got the coupon. The airline was brand new. It was offering direct flights from St. Louis to Great Falls, Montana, and Wichita Falls, Texas, and Salt Lake City, and New York City. And I was going to be making a flight to Manhattan in the fall, so I took advantage and got the discount coupon. Got home and went on their website, and oh, that was wonderful, exploring all the new technological developments and advantage that they had. And the flight was called PMS Airlines. It was pretty much South Airlines. And they had direct flights that featured Cha-Cha's Pizza Buffet on the plane. I thought, oh, this is great. And so I did the booking process. And of course, my coupon was good for one direct flight. And they were offering direct flights. Of course, the direct flight from St. Louis to New York City went through Salt Lake City. The fine print said it was 2 direct flights. So I booked myself, and then my coupon was only good for one-way flight, so I booked my direct flight one way to Salt Lake City, then Salt Lake City one way. And you understand the process, but it was great. And then about 24 hours before my flight, I got the email from PMS Airlines explaining the things about luggage and the new developments of the airline. And they of course told me that any luggage that was overweight would be put on the next available flight at no charge. And the luggage allowable was determined by the height and weight of the passenger. You see, the smaller the square footage of the person, then the greater the square footage of storage that would be available. And also, of course, there was the border crossing thing. If any borders were crossing the flight, if you were legal, you got a green tag, and if you were illegal or suspicious, then you got a red tag. And of course, then there was the seat assignment. Seats were going to be assigned based on the butt and shoulder size of the person. So they had different no one size seat fits all anymore. And smaller people then would be put under the luggage compartment, and larger people would be put out toward the aisle. And that all would be assigned when you checked in at the gate. All of these new improvements, of course, were going to be on the plane. The pizza buffet, of course. And they had a dome compartment for aerial viewing. And also, there would be offered the opportunity to do skydiving 30 minutes before you arrived at the airport. Well, the day came, and I already got my boarding pass online and arrived and got to the airport, and of course looked for the terminal I would be in. I was assigned to Terminal L, so I went to L. And all the gates of L were lined up there. I got L13. And going through security was, I had a couple of surprises. Even though I had my TSA priority status, I still had to remove my left shoe and my belt buckle, which was over 4 inches. And then when I went through X-ray, they found out I had more than 3.5 fluid ounces in my bladder. So I had to go over and relieve that in a little chamber, but got through security after that just fine. Went then down to the gate, and that process was great. They measured us, height, weight, and all that, determined our legality and all that. But then we lined up by height and went into the airplane and took our places. And the plane seemed reconditioned, refurbished. I could tell it was a used airplane, but it was looking nice. And the flight attendants were courteous. They all assured us that each one of them were pharmaceutical assistants, and that was good. We took our places there, and then the flight attendant gave up and gave the instructions, how to do your seatbelt. and a few other additional things that she needed to fill us in on. This was a solar battery propelled airplane. And so in case of an overcast situation, the footrests were designed to be pumped so you could get the battery up. And at time of the emergency, the captain would let us know which rows had to do the pumping. Of course, the folks seated in the emergency exit were warned that in case of an emergency, the emergency exit door would immediately explode open and you would be sacrificing your life to save others. And then they offered the opportunity, in case of an emergency landing, to lighten the load. Anyone who wanted to volunteer to jump out of the plane could do so, and a discount coupon was given as an incentive. And you see, that's where I began my from here to eternity moment. I had relaxed on the plane. I enjoyed the pizza buffet and went to the dome compartment, and that's where I realized it was an old bubble that covered a gun turret from a World War II plane, and then understood some of the reconditioning was going on. I had just gotten back to my seat when Captain Sally had made the announcement about the emergency landing. And for a moment, I was concerned, of course, about the other passengers, but then I remembered that I was the one who volunteered, and it was within a few moments that the flight attendant had come over and said, "Mr. Brown, we'd like you to go to the back of the airplane for your departure." And I got up and went back with two other older men and an older woman, but I knew, of course, they had the parachutes for those who were going to do the skydiving. Of course, those folks had already left. And there we were at the back of the plane, and flight attendant Bob was there, and with the rush of the wind as the open door, I could only try to imagine Captain Sally with her 10-year-old assistant trying to get the plane under control, and I barely heard Bob's words to me when he said, "Good news, Mr. Brown. We're going to be flying over a Denver mattress factory parking lot sale, and there's a 50-50 chance that you might have a soft landing." Well, I thanked Bob for the pizza, and he gave us a gentle shove. Now, as you can see, I survived. And so did the other three jumpers, and all of the passengers on PMS 007. And we were able to hitch a ride back to the terminal at Sidney, Nebraska, and we had a discussion about why they call airport facilities terminals. And when we got there to the carousel, all of the other passengers were rejoicing. I originally had in my mind the bronze plaque of memorial, but now here they were thanking me and the others for our saving the airplane. And I really only have one complaint. I don't know what happened to my luggage. I got there, the carousel was not there. All that I had was my luggage tag that came in on the carousel. Of course, I went to the Lost and Found, and they made me fill out all that paperwork, and I had to be interviewed. Did you have a bag? Did someone else pack your bag? Did you give your bag to a stranger? And I said, I just risked my life to save all of the other passengers. I just want my luggage back. Well, I know some of you are having difficulty believing this story. So just to prove to you, I brought my favorite luggage tag. So, let me tell you, if that's the way PMS is going to handle luggage, I'm not flying with them again.
Okay, thank you, Larry. See, a new story. Isn't this fun? Oh my goodness. No more flying for you. I'm sure every one of you in here thought of a time when you had a horrible flight while you were listening to that story. Our next storyteller is Gary Coons. Gary is from Gladstone, Missouri, Happy Rock, north of Kansas City. Gary is a winner in the Tall Tale contest. He had the shovel to prove it for a year. You get a shovel at that contest. They write your name on it. I don't know what you're supposed to shovel. Anyway, let's welcome Gary Coons. Oh, does it? I can come back up.
When I saw the lights flashing in my rearview mirror, I just had a feeling this wasn't going to turn out well. I was headed down to southern Missouri for my father-in-law's funeral, and my mother-in-law had asked a favor. Of course, I said yes. The favor was, could I drive my father-in-law down to his funeral? It's $1,000 if you die in Kansas City and you have to drive to southern Missouri. So of course I said yes. I figured no problem. I'll put the rear seat of the minivan down and we'll tuck him back there. What I didn't know was my wife and daughters decided no, they were taking the minivan and I got the subcompact. He wouldn't fit in the back seat. So I had a front seat passenger. Which explains why I was driving down country roads late at night, because I just didn't want to see this, and I didn't want anybody else to see this, and then the flashing lights, turned on the turn signals, found a place to pull off the side of the road, rolled down the windows, turned off the car, hands on the steering wheel, just like you're supposed to do. The sheriff's deputy comes up, and I know I'm getting old, but he looked like he was 14 years old. I mean, this was just wrong. I mean, he all arms and legs but he was polite, said, "Sir, do you know how fast you were going?" 55. No, sir. Where are you going? And I thought, this is my chance. I'll play the sympathy card. Well, I'm going to my father-in-law's funeral. And it's tomorrow. And then he said, well, sir, you want to get there safely. I'm going to have to give you a ticket, driver's license, insurance. And I handed him over. And everything was going okay until he bent down and he shone the flashlight into the car. And he kind of focused on my father-in-law, who didn't blink. He said, is he okay? I said, no, he's fine. He's just resting. Are you certain he's okay? Sir, are you okay? Sir? No, fine. No, are you sure he's okay? Who is that? That's my father-in-law, Archie. I thought you said you were taking your father-in-law down to his funeral. You were going there. I am. When you hear the words, get out of the car, keep your hands in plain sight, you know that things have gone from not so good to worse. Up on the hood of the car, he frisked me. I'm telling him it's legal. By the way, it is legal in Missouri to transport a dead body, just to let you know. I'm serious. I've got the paperwork to prove it, but no, he calls it in. I hear over the radio, just hold him there. We'll be there in a little bit. It's like we're out in the middle of nowhere. We're on a county road. He decides, after he realizes I'm safe, he goes over to the passenger side and he bends down and he shines his flashlight in just to make certain. And I don't know how many people here have experience with the recently deceased, but sometimes they make noises and they twitch. And he wasn't expecting that. And that's when the pistol went off. And I yelled out, you shot him! You killed him. You shot him. And he's going, no, I didn't mean to do it. He attacked me. You shot him. And he's going back and forth like this, and he's just looking while I'm going, put the pistol away. And he put it in his holster. It is an advantage of having gray hair with the 14-year-old. Put the pistol away. He says, wait a minute, you said he was dead. How could I kill him? I said, well, how am I going to explain a hole in him? Well, I get over and I look. He missed. He went out the other window. But he's all shaking now. I said, come on, come on. His name was Timmy. I took him back to his car. Come on, Timmy, let's go back to your car. Let's sit down. Let's calm down. Calm down. And I'm back there, and I'm sitting in his car with him. And I'm explaining, it's okay. He's going, you're not going to tell. This is my first night out by myself. My dad's coming to... His dad was the sheriff. I said, no, I won't tell. Well, I do now, but statute of limitations. Do you know those moments in life when something is just wrong and you can't figure out what it is? You think there's something extra there, and there isn't. And then I looked up and I was thinking, what is wrong with this picture, besides the fact that I've got a hysterical police officer in a gun who almost shot my father-in-law, who's dead, in my car. And then I realized my car was missing. I watched it as it was heading down the hill. Apparently, when everything happened, he went over and he knocked it out of gear, and it looked nothing so much like my father-in-law had leaned over. I mean, it was a subcompact. It wasn't much of a stretch. And was steering it, heading away. And I just looked at Officer Timmy, and he just looked at me. I said, chase it. It was like an O.J. Simpson chase. It was slow motion. Why he had the siren on, I don't know. But it's protocol, I guess. And so we're going down this country road. And actually, Archie was doing a really good job keeping it out of the road. I'm thinking, okay, may not be too bad, because this is going to be really difficult to explain to the insurance company. And all of a sudden, we're getting down to the bottom of the hill, and then the road took a curve, and I was thinking, he's not going to make that curve. Oh, no. And then I did something many men probably would do in a low-speed chase. I jumped out of the car and ran faster. What I was thinking I was going to do, I'm not certain. I think I was going to grab the car and pull it back, but fortunately I couldn't catch the car. And then he left the road. Well, he left the paved road, but at the curve, there was a gravel road. And he went into the gravel road, bumped around a little bit. I got up to it, finally got next to the car, and Timmy's behind me with his car. The lights are flashing. I'm thinking, things just can't get too much worse than that. And then I was wondering, where are we? It was a cemetery. I'm not kidding. It was the cemetery. Apparently Archie was in a hurry or something. I don't know. But... And then in the distance, we saw flashing lights and heard sirens. I said, okay, come on. Come back over here. And I said, I got back in the hood of the car like that. Timmy was standing there, and the police came up, and they were asking all sorts of questions. We did not mention the gun back then. And I figured, okay, I've gotten out of it. I'm not going to get a speeding ticket. And I didn't. But apparently Timmy's dad, the sheriff, was irate with having to get up at midnight to go down a country road. So he did find something to give me a ticket for. Archie wasn't wearing his seatbelt. It's true. If you're driving a dead body and they're sitting up in the car, they have to have their seatbelt on. There is an epilogue to the story. 6 years later, my mother-in-law, Hilda, passed away. Her family is as frugal as she is. I had a bigger car then. I had a Subaru Outback then. Again, my wife and daughters chose not to ride with me, but she fit in the back seat. And again, I'm driving down country roads and lights flashing. I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Pulled over, everything the same, just waited. Policeman comes up and I looked, and he'd filled out pretty well in 6 years. He now looked like he was 18 years old. He goes, sir, can I get your driver's license and insurance? I go, Officer Timmy, how you doing? And he looked at me. Mr. Coons, where are you going? I said, I'm going to my mother-in-law's funeral. And he clicked on his flashlight, bent down, looked at the rear passenger and said, is she? I said, yes. He said, drive more carefully, sir.
Thank you, Gary. All right, some good stories here. We have Roger Rose from St. Louis. Everybody The following presentation is a holographic video recording recently recovered from a newly excavated Egyptian archaeological site dating from the Pyramid Age.
This thing on? Hi, my name's Joe. Maybe you've heard of me. I'm the guy that built the pyramids. No lie, it was really me. Well, it was my idea and my design. I had some help with the heavy lifting. But that was no problem because I worked for the big boss. He's a funny guy, the boss. He's got this bunch of guys he calls his wise men. They sit around and think and try to come up with ideas that nobody ever thought of before. And when they do, the boss gets all excited. One day the boss comes in, he says, "Hey, Joe, listen to this. My wise man just thought of it. Buy low, sell high." I say, huh? He says, "Joe, if you buy something at a low price and sell it for more, you come out ahead." I say, I'm not a wise man, but I think I could have figured that out myself. He says, "Joe, you still don't get it. If I buy a lot of something at a low price and sell it for a higher price, I can make a lot of money." The boss is richer than Donald Trump. He doesn't need to make a lot of money. So I take out my employee manual, page 1. The boss is always right. Page 2. If the boss is wrong, refer to page 1. So I say, okay. He says, "Joe, what can I buy a lot of at a low price right now?" And I say, well, grain's going for about 10 cents a bushel. The farmers had a good year. They grew more grain. There's more grain than we can use, and so the price is low. And the boss says, aha, my wise men thought of that too. They call it the law of supply and demand. Okay, Joe, go out and buy me grain. How much? All you can get, as long as it's at a low price. Then what? Then we keep it till the price goes up, sell it, and make a lot of money. I say, boss, we're gonna have a lot of grain. What are we gonna do with it? He just waves his hand and says, oh, you'll figure something out. That's how it is working with the boss. He makes the big decisions and leaves the details to people like me. So I'm doing the math in my head. A gazillion bushels of grain at 1 1/4 bushels to the cubic foot. I'm gonna need a really big storehouse. And that's where I got my brilliant idea. Stone. I can build a storehouse out of stone. So I order big blocks of stone from the stone quarries. I find a reasonably flat spot close to the river so we can ship the stone in by barge and high enough to be up out of the floodplain. And I built a really big hollow square out of those big blocks of stone. Fill the inside of the square up with grain, and then lay another layer, square on top of the first one. Stepped in a little bit to keep it stable. Fill that up with grain, and then another layer, and so on until I end up with a pyramid, all full of grain. It worked out really well. The grain was safe and dry, and the cosmic energies focused so as to keep the grain from spoiling, and even kept out the mice and the insects. So then we waited to see what was going to happen. The price would go up, the boss would sell the grain, make a lot of money. But you know, the next year, the harvest was even better than the first year. We had more grain than we knew what to do with. The price went even lower. It looked like the boss had lost his bet. But he's a high roller. I say, boss, what do I do now? He says, buy low, sell high. So I went out and bought more cheap grain, built another pyramid. This went on, can you believe it, 7 years. The harvests were good. The supply of grain was more than we needed. The price stayed low. The boss kept saying, buy low, sell high. I kept buying cheap grain and building pyramids. But then in the 8th year, there was a drought. The crops failed. The price of grain went through the roof. The boss sold high and made lots and lots of money. Oh, about those pyramids. We tore them down as we sold off the grain. There's always a market for building stone in Egypt. The other pyramids, the famous ones that everybody comes to see, somebody else built those, but it was my idea first.
Now we know the real story, don't we? All right, thank you, Roger, for that story. Our next storyteller comes to us from Downs, Kansas, which is a town of about 900 people. It's out in Kansas. They have a storytelling festival there. 27 years is going on. And Alan is one of the master storytellers, which means he got that shovel 3 years in a row. We know what he did. There's a lot of that going on. All right, welcome Alan DeBay. Okay, I can't seem to. All right. I'll hold it down here. All right, he's got it. Thank you.
Well, it all started off on an ordinary day until I woke up. You see, when I woke up, I heard this little tiny voice. And I looked all around, but there was nobody there. But then on the floor, I saw this little tiny spider. And I knelt down and I listened, and this is what I heard. Hello, I'm Miranda. I'm a spider. Please don't step on me. Now, to most of you, this might be extraordinary, but to an insect and arachnid whisperer, it's kind of normal. Well, I took good care of Miranda. And one day, I decided what I was going to do with her. I decided I was going to use her for fishing. And no, I'm not talking about using her for bait. I was going to use her to create massive underwater spider webs to catch fish with. It's illegal to use nets, but nowhere in the book does it say spider webs. I asked Miranda if she could train herself to catch fish, and she said, sure. Well, I had a problem at first. Spider webs are not strong enough, and they are not waterproof enough to catch fish. This did perplex me a bit, but I devised a new diet for Miranda of ground up concrete and water sealer. I fed that to Miranda for 3 months, and within 3 months, her webs were as strong as concrete, as waterproof as water sealer, and still as flexible as spider webs. Well, one day I took her out fishing, and I had herself tie herself to my line, and I cast her out. Splash. I waited half an hour, and she came walking up my line. I waited another half an hour, and my line broke. Well, the next time I went out, I was much smarter. I just drove my truck down to the edge of the lake, had herself tie herself to the back of the truck, and I threw her out. Splash. I waited an hour, and Miranda came crawling up her web. I waited another hour, and my truck was barely able to haul those 3 tons of fish out of the lake. And that's when the local wildlife and parks officer started coming in my direction, and he was not in a good mood. He said, don't you realize it is illegal to use nets in the lake? I said, here's Miranda. She made a spider web to catch these fish. Well, I don't know if he bought that hook, line, and spider or not, but he let me go. But he told me to never, ever use spider webs in the lake again. And I never did. But I knew I had a great idea. I asked Miranda if she could train other spiders to catch fish, and she said, sure. And I had her train tons and tons of spiders. I was going to go into the business of selling fishing spiders. Nobody where I was buying it, though. Now, this was over 30 years ago, and there was not a great way to market spiders. And so I devised a system of hooking computers up together, and I named it the Internet. Which you all now know became known as the World Wide Web. Now you know why. Well, sales were going great on my website until one day. One day I realized that I couldn't find Miranda anywhere. It turned out that when Miranda was sleeping, I had accidentally sold Miranda. A week later, I got up on the phone and I called all my customers, and I finally found the right person. But it turned out I had sold Miranda to the wrong person. Someone for the equal rights of insects and arachnids. Well, it was 2 weeks later, the police arrived at my house and they read me Miranda's rights. It may be funny now, but it was not funny then. Well, they ended up hauling me away. And in court, Miranda explained that the new diet didn't cause any problems and they let me go. But if you ever see a talking spider, I recommend that you just let the spider lie. Or, as Miranda would say, What a tangled web we weave when telling stories that are oh so hard to believe.
Okay, I think we need to take a little stretch break now. We've had 4 storytellers. We're going to have 4 more stories. The restrooms are out the door and to your right.